What's up, Call of Duty fans? Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed CWL London Day 2. This is the recap of all those games that happened today, and we've got a lot of games to go over, so I'll try to jump through these pretty quickly for you. Going over to the pools, though, first, again, if you're not familiar with the format, the top two from the first day of pool play in those pools would move on to the winner's bracket of the championship bracket. The bottom two would be instantly inserted into the loser's bracket, essentially giving them a one and done if they lose. So we'll go over the pools here first. Pool A would be OpTic Gaming on top with their 3-0, a 9-3 that looked very good throughout pool play. Their only big scare was versus Enigma 6, and there was a close 4-game set in there versus 100 Thieves as well, where they would actually be their only loss. 100 Thieves, talking about OpTic, would be their only loss, as they finished off 2-1. Enigma 6 looked really strong in pool play, but they would be unfortunately going into the losers bracket. And Reciprocity, the hometown heroes, would start off 0-3, only winning 2 maps. Not what you want to see. Over in pool B, we've got Gen.G on top with a very dominating performance through a very difficult group. They would go 3-0 with only losing a single map. Splice 2-1, a 6-4 scoreline with that clutch win versus Luminosity, as well as a good win versus Denial. And then you're dealing with Denial, who was able to find wins against Luminosity, and LG 0-3, only winning 3 maps. You don't like to see that. Pool C was a very tight one, as every single team had win conditions previously and historically throughout this title this year against one another, with the exception of FaZe Clan, who was the wild card. It would be United and FaZe Clan escaping, though, with a 2-1 win-loss ratio, both of them barely escaping above 500 in the map win-loss count, which would leave Evil Geniuses and Team Envy to go to the losers bracket. This entire pool was 1-1 going into their third and final matches, so it came down to who won those third matches. United and FaZe able to do that and give themselves the spots in the winners bracket. Pool D was hell in a handbasket, and Heretics would rue the day because they would go 3-0, looking very calm and polished throughout all of it, with only dropping 1 search and destroy in that match, in those matchups, leaving the other 3 at a 1-2 tie, where UYU would win the tiebreaker. Which the tiebreaker, in case you're unfamiliar, it just comes down to what the map win-loss ratio was in between the 3 teams that were tied. So you throw away the matches versus Heretics, and then you look at the map win-loss ratios. UYU getting the gift here of getting into the winner's bracket. Taking a look at what that winner's bracket looked like, we'll start there first. It was OpTic Gaming versus FaZe Clan to start the day, Heretics versus Splice, United and 100 Thieves, and then Gen.G and UYU. And our predictions of this one were pretty straightforward, with the exception of really only the Heretics and Splice game and maybe the United 100 Thieves game. Here are the scores for you. We'll go over each of them individually, though. Starting with the OpTic FaZe game, this one would be OpTic all the way through. FaZe Clan looked solid throughout day 1. They didn't look convincing enough to be a top team, but definitely one that could fight for potentially a top 8 spot here at the tournament if they were to play on par and mechanically just be all in sync with one another. But they would not find that success here against OpTic. A 250-159, 6-3 search, and a 3-1 control. Pretty easy runnings for OpTic Gaming. Everybody in OpTic looking very solid throughout. TJ Haley specifically. Whew, he's been playing on fire throughout this entire tournament. Down to Heretics and Splice, and how about this set? 3-1 for Heretics. It would start off in favor of Splice, a 250-158 win for them, but from there on out, the Heretics just took it back to what they knew their first time against Splice. You remember all the way back to the second week of their pro play divisionals, where they were able to beat Splice 3-1. That would be the same score here. It was a 6-4 on the search, a very back and forth affair there. A 3-1 on the seaside control, which honestly Heretics looked very good at. And then a 250-246 on the final hardpoint, a very close game, but it would be Heretics able to survive and move on. And again, I said this team would probably go 3-0 in pools, but then lose in the winners bracket, and then lose their next game probably in the losers bracket. But apparently this Heretics team is absolutely for real. Splice started off really strong, and I was very wary that if this Splice team comes out hot, I don't know if they'll be able to get stopped, but Heretics were able to warm up at the end of that hard point, that first hard point, and from there on out, they were just rolling all the way through. Lucky is really good with that sniper rifle, go figure. Sukri with the ICR had moments, but also everybody in the front line, as all of them played really well. Metals, Methods, and Journey all playing very well throughout the entirety of the day. United and 100 Thieves, not nearly as convincing as the 3-0 would suggest. EU coming out playing very strong. It was a 250-241 on Hacienda Hardpoint, a 6-4 on the Hacienda Search, and then a 3-0. That's where it looked a little bit more convincing for 100 Thieves on Gridlock. But this United team looked like they were here to play today, and I was excited to see what they might be able to do in the losers bracket with that loss. Gen.G, easy clap, no problems. 250-173, 6-2, 3-0. where the score is there. We'll jump over to the second round of the winners bracket, where OpTic would go up against Heretics. And how about this 100 Thieves and Gen.G game? This was my prediction to be the grand finals, and they're meeting a little bit earlier on than I thought they might, but this came on to which bracket side got placed where. We'll start things off and just take a look at the scores. OpTic would take the 3-0 versus Heretics, but it was a very close 3-0. Do not let it fool you, CWL London fans. And then Gen.G and 100 Thieves would go to 5. That was after 100 Thieves was able to reverse sweep, and that's where we'll start our conversation. It came off with Gen.G with a 250 to 172 win on the hard point and a 6-3 win on the search, and they were a couple kills away from potentially closing out a 3-0 against Uncharted Thieves, but it would go round 5. 100 Thieves would clutch out, and then from there, it was all 100T, 250 to 94 on the next hard point for 100 Thieves, and then finishing it off with a 6-4 win on the Arsenal search. A very competitive map. It just simply came down to the fact that Gen.G played very, very well. 100 Thieves was just on a whole nother level. Octane, Priesta, all having great performances. Slasher getting involved. Kenny and Enable also playing super well. There was nothing really that Gen.G did wrong besides not be able to finish off that control, and then they looked a little bit lopsided in the map choices from there. You would have loved to have seen them do a little bit better on Gridlock. It's not been their worst place. They're 6-2 on that map now after that loss there on that hard point. But they would not rue the day. They would fall down to the losers bracket, which is where we'll take our conversation next, because we'll see OpTic and 100 Thieves in the winners finals later on tomorrow in day 3. But here's the losers bracket: Reciprocity, Evil Geniuses, Denial versus Midnight, Enigma 6, and Envy in what would be a very difficult first round for each of them, and then Elevate and Luminosity. Again, this seemed to be a pretty straightforward day by the looks of it. You figure Reciprocity is going to bounce back. They would. A 3-1 win there. Midnight with a little bit of a surprising 3-1 against Denial. Team Envy able to outlast Enigma 6, even though, yes, it does read 3-1. Enigma 6 put up a hell of a fight. And then Luminosity and Elevate went to 5. I don't know. I don't even want to analyze that game. But let's talk about them each individually. Starting with the Reciprocity Evil Geniuses set. A very good look for Reciprocity. It was mostly a pretty close set throughout. It was a 250-216 on the first hard point. 250-215 on the second, I believe. Maybe flip-flopped. I can't remember which was first. A 3-6 win, or pardon me, 6-3 win for Evil Geniuses on the surge. And then a pretty convincing 3-0 for Reciprocity. They would bounce back. It was a very quiet morning start, though, for the event center, so they didn't really get the flavor and fuel behind their home crowd fans, but they still would outlast the newly placed roster of Evil Geniuses. I will say this roster, though, for EG looked much better than they did previously. There's some hope here. It just comes down to, is there enough for them to make them a major contender? I don't know if I can honestly say yes to that. Midnight and Denial is absolutely insane, just poor match between both these teams. Midnight played a lot hotter here today, though, and Denial still play with the same question marks. Again, you take a look at this Denial team. You're talking about Joe and Bands in the front line. Alex, who knows what he's trying to run? He's been using a little bit of everything. Brack has been the glue to hold this team together, and Raided's been doing pretty well himself, but Brack did not have nearly the same kind of all-star performance he did yesterday. It was still a good performance from Brack, but not as good as it needed to be to carry Denial through this set. It was a 250-214 start for Denial, but then it would be pretty much all Midnight from there. A 3-6 on the search, an 0-3 on the control, and a 218-250 second hardpoint. Midnight moving on. Enigma 6 and Envy. This was a good one, and honestly, it very well could have read 3-1 the opposite direction, but it wouldn't be the case here. Enigma 6 would start off on the back foot, though, as they would go down in the first hardpoint. Actually, both of them reading a 250-219 and a 250-199. A 6-5, though, for Enigma 6 on the Search and Destroy. And then a control that went to round 5, where Enigma 6 was only a couple kills away from potentially sending this to what could have been a game 5. But they weren't able to capitalize. Team Envy, Decimate, and Huke looked insane throughout the entirety of this set. They were actually able to open up the point at A, where Enigma 6 was trying to fend off their last stand, down a couple lives on defensive C-side. That church got broken by Huke and Decimate and Silly, and from there, Envy was able to clean up and find the cap right near the end of that round. A very close game, though, and big props to Enigma 6. Yes, they finished at top 16, but I'll bring them up again here in a little bit. This was a team that had potential to potentially finish top 8, especially with the bracket that was in front of them. Luminosity and Elevate, I don't know what to say here. Luminosity, they somehow survive. They've looked terrible in hardpoint more often than not. 216-250, 186-250, but they've been surviving on the hinge of their Search and Destroy. Almost similar vibes to E United, as they would find a 6-3 and a 6-5, and then a 3-0 in the control. Finally looking like the control team that we started to kind of fall in love with between the Fort Worth stage. Moving on to the second round, the teams dropping down from the first round of the winners bracket would be UYU versus Reciprocity, E United versus Midnight, Splice versus Envy, and FaZe Clan and Luminosity. UYU and Reciprocity was actually a very close set. As you see it was a 3-1, but it's closer than that 3-1 would suggest. It was a 234 to 250 and a 250 to 212 on the hard points, and then a 6-5 search and destroy. Reciprocity would win the day, though, on their control, which has been good throughout this tournament. 4-2, by the way, in their control, when they were previously only sitting at, 5-15 before the event. The biggest problem for Rec is the simple fact that they're trying to find wins when they've only won a single search and destroy, and it was a 6-5 here against UYU, a team that was previously very good at search. Had not looked very good here at this event, but they would survive against UYU in what was, again, a very good game. E United and Midnight, this one also going to 5. Midnight putting up a heck of a fight, but would not be able to outlast E United. Simp and the gang just looked really, really good at search and destroy. Since Simp, did that 10 times fast. Since Simp has been on this roster, they have opened up their search and destroy so much more. His power, be able to use the Paladin and then switch to a Sog the next round, makes him an absolute double threat, and he's been showing up a lot for the squad. It would be an 0-3 loss for them, though, on control, which is not what you want to see, but the 6-2 and 6-3 search and destroy wins would get them to essentially be allowed to go half and half, which is essentially what it was on the hard points. Midnight, though, this was the first look at Midnight that I started to say, what if they had Saints in the mix? Would they have played better? I think they would have played better. I don't know if they would have placed any better. They may have been a winner's bracket team instead of UYU, so maybe they would have gotten a little bit more leeway in their bracket here today, but probably not nearly as much as you might consider. But again, playing with a substitute, not great. Saints was missing. I don't know the full story behind it. Maybe one of you guys do. Leave a comment below if you have any idea of what's going on with Saints. Has he been moved to sub? I'm not 100% sure, but the initial announcement for Midnight was that it would still be Saints in the main roster, and it would be the new addition of Knight that would be on the substitute role, I believe was what it was. So a little bit of a mix-up there, but it wouldn't be able to get them through E United, but a little bit of a scare there for EU. Then Splice and Envy, and how about this? Splice gets taken down by Envy at a pretty considerable margin. It would start off, both of the hard points would go in favor of Envy, a 172 to 250, a 135 to 250. It was the search and destroy that Splice wanted a 6-3, and then it was a 1-3 on the control. Envy looked to be an incredible team. Again, Huke and Decimate have been playing out of their minds, but Aches and Silly have also been in the mix. And then you can't forget about Pharaoh, who's been playing very solid throughout, but very good proving grounds here for Decimate, who I thought was one of the best free agents out there after the PLQ, was on a restricted free agency with G2, was not picked up for Fort Worth, would be picked up here, and he's looking very, very solid throughout. So good for Decimate. I feel really good for him. But again, I want to bring up Enigma 6 because I think Enigma 6 could have beaten this Splice team today. It would have been a closer set, I think, but I think Enigma 6 could have beat this team if they would have gotten through Envy. But for now, Envy still surviving and moving through. And then we finish off this round of the losers bracket with some drama. FaZe Clan and Luminosity. It would read as a 3-2 for Luminosity, but it should have read as a 3-1 for FaZe. And if you missed it, there was some controversy on the last round of a Seaside Control round 5, 3-on-1 situation. Slacked able to clean up 1 kill near checkers as he was on the defense. And it was Zuma and one other playing inside point A, the chapel area, where as Slacked was sliding in, you'll notice when we watch this clip in slow motion that it says that Zuma will have captured the point. Slacked hits a grab slam to kill 2, and the game actually awards the game to LG, giving them the map win. This would be looked at extensively, but here's this clip that I want to show you guys, and take a look at it. Slacked will find this first kill in checkers. As he slides in, it is a 2-on-2, 1 kill comes through, and then pause it right here. You'll notice on the bottom left, it says Zuma has captured the point, or captured the zone. As he's sliding in, then Slacked, as we restart it, will hit the grab slam, will knock 2, and you don't see it on this slow motion, but the game would read it as a 3-2 in Luminosity. A victory screen would show up for Slacked, and you both know in real time, nobody knew who won. Zuma popped off because he saw the point was captured and probably got the sound effect saying the point had been captured, but Slack pops off because he hits the grab slam for the double kill, and he's the last man standing. Apparently, from what I've been told, this was looked at in theater mode by the referees, and there's no way they don't see the same information we do. He's not contesting the point. It's not a spectator delay because the game registers as Zuma has captured the point. But fractionally after that happens, Slack jumps in and gets a double kill. The referees end up awarding the game based on how the game called it. I'm not okay with this. And you can't blame LG. You really can't necessarily blame League Ops in this instance, but you can blame Treyarch for not going through in their initial programming and trying to break their game to see if they can break win conditions, which is like a go-to QA thing to do in the late stages of development. I would be mad, and a lot of people were. If you were paying attention on Reddit or Twitter, there were a ton of comments from pros, other analysts, other content creators, other outside influencers that thought that FaZe Clan got cheated. They would end up going into the fourth hardpoint, and it would be all FaZe, a 250 to 166, but they would not be able to handle Luminosity in the search and destroy, and they would lose it there in map 5. But I don't know. This is bad looks, and you feel bad for FaZe very vastly, but LG, they will move on into the next round of the winners bracket. And again, it is just the losers bracket. And it would be just a losers bracket matchup here. Reciprocity versus E United. Team Envy going up against Luminosity. And well, this one I think got most of the fans what they anticipated. E United with a 3-1 over Reciprocity. Team Envy with a 3-2 over Luminosity. Going into this one more specifically, E United looked a lot better here. Reciprocity was just, you could tell, not quite at the form that they were at Fort Worth. It was a 250-109 and a 250-240 hard point, and then a 6-2 search and destroy. Reciprocity would snag the control at a 3-1 scoreline, but E United, again, behind Simp, has looked absolutely insane. Luminosity, they would not be able to outlast Team Envy, but it would go to another game 5, and it was very, very close throughout. Luminosity would actually this time take both hard points, while Envy would take both search and destroys. Usually it's been the other way around for these two teams, and then it was a very convincing 3-0 on what was a frequency control for Team Envy, so they would last the day. And again, Huke and Decimate are very, very scary, and now that this team is starting to click and roll, they could be a very big threat. So we'll get the games tomorrow. Heretics and E United, Gen.G and Team Envy first. Honestly, these could be pretty thrilling games, but I think I still go with what my gut would tell me, which is that Heretics should be able to take E United. These are initial reactions. I'm not looking at map counts from before. I can do that, I guess, very quickly as we'll take a look at it. Heretics and E United, the first time they played, it was a 3-2 favoring Heretics. That happened all the way back in their first regular season game. It was a very back and forth battle there that Heretics was able to eke out in map number 5. And then as you take a look at Gen.G and Team Envy, you have to figure that Gen.G is still a possible top 3, if not championship contender. They have not played Team Envy yet, so this will be the first time that these two squads match up. You just have to be careful of this Decimate Huke combination if you're Gen.G. You got to find a way to play around that and maybe even put them on maps where they won't be nearly as effective. And then, of course, you got OpTic and 100 Thieves going. I'm not even going to put a prediction on that one. I think it's going to go 5, and I think it's going to be noise blisteringly loud in the arena. I've been really excited for it. Beyond this weekend, again, I will be doing a franchise-based video talking about what franchising is once more, as far as what you need to be looking at as far as, okay, this is what I could be anticipating for 2020 and what you need to ignore. And then we'll also make a second video talking about the other potential bidders into the CWL for 2020 franchising. We'll also be doing power rankings videos and other online shoutcasting things over the games that have not been casted. So, a couple of things for you before I go that I want you guys to leave comments below on. Number 1, which Charlie and Delta games do you want to see recasted? But more importantly, number 2, if I were to do these casts, would you guys enjoy seeing an eye tracker that shows what I'm looking at while I'm watching the games and shoutcasting them? Sometimes I feel like people kind of get like into this drooling state where they just watch what's on the screen. They're not really watching the things, and kind of where I get my opinions on some of these squads comes a lot from how I shoutcast as well. So if you're interested in seeing a little bit of an eye tracker on screen while I shoutcast to kind of see what I'm looking at and where I get my information, please let me know. Otherwise, let me know if you think that's a stupid idea and it's going to be distracting. This comes down to whatever you guys prefer. That's going to be it, though. I'll catch you guys for the final day recap. Can't wait to watch it live. If you want to join us in my Discord, by the way, and have discussions on everything, feel free to join my Discord. Link is in the description below. Would love to have you a part of the conversation while we're watching the games. But until next time, hope you all keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.